All right, good evening, everybody. It is Steve with Real Progressives. Earlier today, I talked about the Hurricane Harvey down in the southern border of the United States and discussed the situation regarding the insurance companies and the national insurance system as it stands, which is going to burst if some operational realities don't become very apparent very quickly. Ultimately, it's very important that we start talking about what American people can do with economic knowledge and not sit there in some little club in some dark little hole talking about little teeny formulas that absolutely no one on the face of this earth, other than a select handful of people with white robes and candles, can actually do anything with. The clerics that want to keep this away from the American people have done more damage to the United States and, quite frankly, the world than any other person on the planet. They have made this just as the Holy of Holies did with the Bible, keeping the average man and woman away from knowing this stuff, just like the old computer programmers who sat there in their little labs with their lab coats and their little sterile rooms and tried to make these things out to be far more complicated than they were, once again, keeping people in the dark, unable to act, feeling hopeless and helpless. So tonight's program with Ellis will be all about the art of semantics and how semantics have blunted the ability for the average person to act upon economic knowledge. It is a cancer. It is rotting us to the core. And without further ado, let me bring on my favorite friend here, Mr. Ellis Winningham. Sir, welcome back. How are you tonight?
Shitty. How are you?
I'm pretty fucking shitty too, my friend. But I'm going to smile through it because, quite frankly, we have been fighting now for damn near a year together doing this. And we have seen many, many, many thousands of people come in contact with modern monetary theory and understanding the way our federal government and state governments, quite frankly, operate and global economies work around the world. It makes no sense to me why we would allow semantic games to blunt our force and blunt our progress in helping people activate and mobilize in the knowledge of economics. So without further ado, I want to talk to you a little bit about some things that we've been experiencing as we have tried to approach our work. One of the most important things is the semantic game about taxes, funding, spending. Mm-hmm. This is something that has plagued many people in the MMT community for years now, is a semantic game where people try to hedge their bets and they dance around so much that by the time they're done with it, they haven't said anything. They've literally confused people, and people are like, economics, that's that boring subject I refuse to take in school that I don't want to learn about anyway, so everything's hopeless and I'm done again. Talk about taxes don't fund spending and what the operational realities are, the political realities are, and why we say it the way we say it or have said it the way we say it, so that regular people can know that in no way, shape, or form the federal government can go broke.
Well, I'm going to start off by saying that everybody and their grandmother knows what we mean when we say taxes don't fund spending. When we say federal taxes don't fund federal spending. When we say UK government taxation does not fund the UK government. Everybody knows what we're talking about. We're talking about the dollars that citizens pay in tax. Then, the government collects those and then supposedly spends them. It does not. Okay. So everybody knows what we're talking about, but there are people out there that forever have been desperate to play a game of semantics. Or at least that's the way I define it. It's just a game of semantics. And a lot of it is about the word fund. Okay. And the actual reality is simple to understand. The government itself could spend dollars, if it wanted to, into existence, but without taxation, all right, without the force of taxation, it's going to be very hard to get people to accept it. Okay, that's the whole thing. This goes back to Minsky. Okay, anybody can create a monetary instrument. The trick is getting it accepted. Okay, you have the government wanting people to use the US dollar. They want to make it a widely accepted monetary instrument. All right. So what the government does is it imposes a tax. Okay, a tax is a burden. I don't care what mamby-pamby people out in the wilderness of social media and blogosphere have to say. A federal tax, the federal tax, when we talk about the US government, is nothing but a burden. That's exactly what it is. It is a burden placed upon you by the government, and that burden has to be lifted. And the only way it can be lifted, according to the US government, is if you have US dollars. You have to have the government's currency, and you have to have enough of it to settle the tax liability. Okay? The government then sits there and watches you panic because you've got to come up with dollars, right? So what businesses will do, what the market will do, is that it will just take these dollars, or it'll just take its goods and services, okay? And it will sell them to the government for the dollars, all right? And this way, people get a hold of dollars, and then they can pay their taxes. And businesses will pay workers so they can pay their taxes and whatnot, all right? So in this sense, without the force of, without the burden of federal taxation, it is very difficult for the government to spend, okay? This is the game of semantics that they're playing, because they begin conflating that. They begin conflating that with the operational non-reality that the government somehow needs an income, and so it taxes, and then people give the government money, and then the government spends the proceeds of those tax collections. Nothing like that occurs whatsoever. That's all bunk, all right? But there's been arguments going on for years now over the word fund. We all know what it means, but people want to talk about the word fund in the sense that without the force of taxation, the government couldn't spend because no one would accept the dollar. That's what they're trying to say. And it's getting conflated in some people's minds, especially people in blogosphere and on social media. It gets conflated in their mind with the act of spending the proceeds of tax collections, and no such thing occurs. No such thing occurs in the US, no such thing occurs in Canada, no such thing occurs in Australia, no such thing occurs in the United Kingdom. Sorry.
So Ellis, I want to take that on for just a second.
Is it okay if I be myself?
Yeah.
I don't want to play to the camera. Since last October, I've been playing the camera. I'm going to be myself. People are going to get really shocked too.
Knock yourself out, man, because I'm telling you right now, I'm over.
I'm in a lot of pain. I dug a fire pit today and finished it, and I'm in a lot of pain, so I'm going to be myself. If you don't
I want you to be nothing but yourself.
All right. Let's do this.
So, but let me ask you this question, right? So, you know, as somebody out there dealing with trying to educate regular people, the deluge of pure, unadulterated idiocy is astounding. We're not talking about mild-mannered idiocy here. We are talking about heaping levels of like just fecal matter everywhere coming at you. I mean, they don't like you talk about economics. They're talking about pedophilia. They're talking about all kinds of bizarre stuff. And it's like, how can the American people ever find hope if they don't somehow or another block the noise out of the trash and the disgustingness that floats around the blogosphere and focus? We're the only ones providing hope. I've literally been looking for anybody to join hands and literally provide the American people hope. And I get a lot of hedging of bets. I get a lot of, well, let me phrase this in a way that just, you know, it's not going to be really saying much, but I'm going to cycle around in a circle, and I'm going to say it in such a way that it doesn't really end up saying anything. And the reason why I love working with Ellis is because Ellis understands that we all didn't go to school to become economists, that we all don't have 12, 14, 100 hours a day to dive into white papers and to break down macro equations into micro realities and you know, do all these modeling and sit there and break down stuff that really is irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. When we synthesize this data down to a point that you can actually take it to your congressperson, that you can take it to your senator, that you can take it to your town hall, and that you can sit there and educate your friends to bring them into an understanding that it's not time to throw in the towel, that we can fight today. Okay? We're trying to give you economics at a level that invites you to learn more. We're trying to give you the net so that you are not swallowed up by ridiculous details that made you tune out in college and high school. We're trying to get you to a point where you understand enough that when they tell you something on TV in a debate, when they tell you something like, oh my God, we got to cut spending because, well, you know, the country's broke. We want you to understand that they are lying to you. Republicans are lying to you. Democrats are lying to you. And honestly, these third parties that haven't embraced the truth are lying to you. Okay? And this brings me to the next point. Warren Mosler gave us this quote, and I want to bring this up real quickly. So give me 1 second. Let me pull it up. This quote right here is very important, but it's very difficult for people to grab hold of. And I will bring it up here for just a second. This quote right here, you know, Warren Mosler said it very, very succinctly. Warren is a man of very few words. But this right here is very, very clear for anybody that has any questions. When we say taxes don't fund spending, in no way, shape, or form at the federal level is spending operationally restrained by tax revenue. Guys, if that's the case, by definition, it's not paying for spending. If somebody has the gall, the disgusting gall to fight over whether or not the word funding or paying for is somehow or another some grandiose thing to grandstand on.
Mm-hmm.
Now
you understand, Steve, why in every post, every article, when I talk about pay for, I always have quotes around it.
Yeah.
That's why.
I want people to see this point blank. We'll leave this up here for a second so that there's no question. Warren Mosler says, point blank, I'll make a better statement. Spending at the federal level is in no way operationally restrained by tax revenue. Lots of political restraints. So let's talk about that, Ellis, for just a moment. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Mm-hmm. So political constraints, the debt ceiling.
Yeah.
These are artificial constructs.
Right.
We have, you know, nonsense about selling bonds that don't in any way, shape, or form create digital dollars. They don't fund anything. They don't actually pay for anything. In fact, Warren has gone on record, and so has every other economist worth their salt, and said that a zero interest rate policy, or ZIRP, would do away with our need to sell bonds. The problem is the bonds are there because people want to save in U.S. dollars. I mean,
people like to safe investment. Let's just say that.
Okay, so talk about
risk-free investment. You get a little bit of return. All a bond is a U.S. dollar that pays interest. Another statement by Warren Mosler, right there. That's what it is. Okay, but the true nature of treasury bonds in a modern monetary economy, like you see here and around the world, they're useless. They're useless artifacts from ages long ago. And I've talked about this on the program before. It's nothing more than a crank on a Model T Ford, sticking it on a Ferrari. And what the hell are you doing that for? You don't need to do that. And so it is the main operational facet of a treasury bond, the main operational purpose of a treasury bond is to allow the government to establish and maintain a particular interest rate of its choosing. That's it. Okay? But in this era and in this age where, you know, the central bank can pay interest on reserves and get the same effect as a bond, okay? Or we could do something even smarter and just tell the Federal Reserve or tell the central bank, just maintain a 0% interest rate policy, and then we won't issue any more bonds. And when that doesn't happen, you know, where's the national debt? It's nowhere to be found, okay? Because there isn't one. That's the point. You see, well, how is the government spending, by God, and the debt's not going up? It just spent $17 trillion, but there's no debt. That's because we're not issuing bonds. Well, how is it covering its deficit? See, all this nonsense comes from a misunderstanding of the operational realities of federal spending, the mechanics of bond issuance, what it's really for, okay? And what Warren said there about taxes. there are no operational constraints. What Warren means to say is there is nothing financial in reality that would prevent the U.S. government from spending $100 quadrillion in 5 minutes from now. Nothing at all. All right, nothing would prevent the UK government from suddenly spending 100 quadrillion British pounds and sticking them in an account somewhere. Nothing is preventing it from doing that. So there's no operational restraint. So they're all political. They're politically motivated. You see, they're political. They're choices. They're artificial. Okay. Australia has a lot of them. Australia is like the god of artificial constraints. I mean,
I put a great quote from you up here, Ellis. You said, "Terribly sorry." Well, I should let you read it because it's beautiful.
Oh, you read it. You read it.
Terribly sorry to inform some of you.
Oh, it's terrible. This is awful. This is tragic.
Terribly sorry.
Terribly sorry to inform some of you.
Do it in your Tiny Tim voice.
Terribly sorry to inform some of you, but a passionate game of semantics concerning the word fun doesn't negate the operational realities of federal spending and taxation as outlined by MMT, nor does it debunk MMT. It'll take far more than semantics, I'm afraid. More. Please, sir. More. Right? No, you see, it's not Tiny Tim. It's Oliver Twist.
That's right.
You keep getting this wrong. What is wrong? You're drunk. Oh. Too much chapstick for you. Okay.
All right, well, but see, this is great. I had so much fun with this. I want to show one more here real quickly because this one, it takes the Tiny Tim or Oliver Twist out of it, okay, and it puts it straight into the reality here. And I want you to see this. This is from this is from this guy named Ellis. It's going to be very hard to see. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, Ellis, but if you can, let me know. I'm going to put this up here.
No, I can't see that.
You can't see that? Well, hold on.
Taking up the whole screen and you can't read the whole thing.
Well, all right. So this is a really, really beautiful quote. It's up on our page. If you want to dig through the images, it's right there. Give them one more, please, please.
That's Oliver Twist. Look, all right, everybody ignore Stephen for a moment. Tiny Tim is a crippled kid who has a disease and he may die. Oliver Twist is in an orphanage, all right, and he's just hungry and he wants more gruel, and more? He wants more. It's a different story. Stop.
All right.
Where were we now? We were talking about something. Here.
This will play into what you're saying too, Ellis. I like this right here. This is from our guy, Amir, who is a great tweeter on Twitter. And I sat there and went after him, not hard, but just enough to nudge him because he was out there. He has a great platform. He's got a huge audience. And I wanted to make sure that we got in front of him. Mm-hmm. And, I told him, I said, I'm grateful to you for your strong voice on so many issues. Please direct message me, but please learn MMT. And he comes back, and this was really encouraging because I'm going to keep working with him here. But he said, thank you, Stephen. It absolutely makes sense to question why we still have a gold-based monetary system when Nixon actually ended it in 1971. Right. And, this, Ellis, to me, shows that people are getting this. They're hearing it in some way, shape, or form because this guy's got a huge platform. He's definitely not an MMTer. There's no question he's not.
We don't have a we don't have a gold-based monetary system at all. But people think they do.
That's right.
That's what we should say. And they conflate basically in I don't know, economists speak. People are conflating fixed exchange regimes with flexible currency arrangements. It doesn't work that way. It's like conflating a Model T Ford with a Ferrari. Okay, two different beasts entirely. It's just not going to work.
That's right.
All right. Different rules. Yeah. This one can go 60 miles an hour. It doesn't break the laws of physics. Yeah, God.
So, all right. So, one of the.
You want me to explain that one post of mine that was really long? Was that what you were wanting me to do?
I wanted you to, but it's too hard to see. Do you think you can?
I can say it
off your head?
Well, yeah, I teach this stuff. What the hell's
Well,
wrong?
I'm saying, do you know which? Could you see it? It's so small. I needed a microscope.
I know what post it is. It's the one that where I'm talking about. I'm trying to explain a deficit, and I'm explaining why a deficit. You can't just say, "Oh, well, some deficit is necessary, but we have to be careful." Like a federal deficit is always a dangerous thing, and you have to be careful with it. The truth is that when you have a government deficit, first of all, is not, and I'm going to be very clear, a government deficit, a budget deficit is not the difference between how much the government spends and its income. A government deficit is the difference between how many dollars the US government has spent into existence and how many it has destroyed through taxation. That's what a deficit is. So it's the difference between there, and it has to be greater than zero. Okay, it has to be greater than zero. And there are two things which impact a deficit. It's very important. The first thing is you and I. We're called the domestic private sector. That's the US domestic economy. Okay, our condition, how much unemployment we have, what's going on. The condition of the domestic economy plays a significant role in how large that deficit should be. If unemployment is at like 10%, it's going to require a large deficit. Okay, it's just going to have to be large. Okay, and if unemployment is nearing full, then it's going to have to be a little bit smaller. Okay, but also the external sector is important. All right, the external sector is the rest of the world. The US, for instance, runs a current account deficit, which means that it imports far more than it exports, right? So this means that dollars are flowing out of the country. They're flowing out of the domestic private sector and into foreign hands. They're not actually leaving the country, just going into foreigners' hands. This leaves less for Americans to spend, all right? So if that's going on, the US government's position must be one of a permanent deficit. See how that works? Must be a permanent deficit. So the question, how large should that deficit be, is determined by the condition of the domestic economy. How much unemployment? What are we trying to do? Okay, what are the real resources? How many are idle? How many are occupied? Are there some that we could unoccupy and move to something else? You see, you have to ask these questions, all right? But what a federal deficit cannot do is exceed persistently. That means go beyond, on a regular basis, the actual ability for the economy to respond with output. In other words, the real ability to produce goods and services. And when we say real ability, we're not talking about an imaginary one. We mean the actual one, down to the last thing. Okay, so when you've got people working full-time 40 hours, making decent wages, and there are more jobs than there are people to do those jobs, you're pretty much at full employment. You can't go any further. All right, so federal deficit spending could push you over the brink and you'd end up with inflationary pressures beginning. Okay, right. But the determination of the size of the deficit is not made by worrying about the budget. Like Steve goes out and his income is I don't know, what is it? Steve's income is $100,000 a year, and suddenly he notices that he's going to be having to spend $120,000 a year, which means he's going to be in the hole $20,000. Oh God, he's running a deficit. Steven, stop, you're going to go broke. You're going to have to go in debt to keep spending. Okay, that's the way people want to look at this. Look at the deficit that way. Oh, we can, some deficit's important, Stephen, but we don't want to go too far, as though the deficit itself is inherently dangerous and it has to be watched carefully. You know, madness in people who want to run deficits must not unwatched go. This is all bullshit. You have to ask yourself, how's the economy doing? You say, well, there's a 9.6 or an 8.2 U6 unemployment rate. Okay, that's a pretty high percentage. All right, that means that there's a lot of people that are unemployed, and there's also a lot of people that are working part-time that want more work and can't find it. That means the deficit's going to be larger. You understand what I'm saying? You can't know until you know the condition of the U.S. economy. It's just that simple. And basically what way Warren Mosler would put it is that you have to meet the private domestic sector's desire to net save. Everybody wants to save in US dollars. So as long as we meet their savings desires, we're good to go. All right? And that's true. All right? But you have to know about the condition of the US economy. You can't just guess. You can't just say, oh, deficits are bad, so if we're going to run one, make sure it's really small. It's a bunch of horse shit. All right?
Yeah,
it's just dumb.
I want to take a moment and put up another Mosler quote that I think is worth. I just took it down, but I'm going to put it back up here momentarily if I can find it. Sorry about that. Where the heck is it? Oh, here we go. So this right here is back to our semantic argument. You know, I'm going to read it out loud. Warren would say just semantics about the definition of fun. Folks, do you hear me? I want you to pay loud and clear attention to this. Warren Mosler, the father, literal father of modern monetary theory, telling you point blank, dropping the elbow from the top rope. It's just semantics about the definition of fund. Yeah. Folks, let's say it together. 1, 2, 3. It's just semantics about the definition of fund. Spending requires a seller. Tax liabilities create sellers of real goods and services. The government then buys what it wants, paying in dollars. Then taxes are paid. Creating sellers is generally not considered a funding operation. Hence this discussion. Folks, do you hear that? Do you want me to read it in one fell swoop? I'll do it in a slightly different. Ellis, can you do it in the Oliver Twist voice?
No, that would be disrespectful.
All right, well, then I'll do
it. He's absolutely correct. I mean, you can boil it down to what I just said at the beginning of the program. Spending requires a seller. Is that not obvious? If you got to sell something, look, it's real simple. The government simply wants to provision itself with goods and services. A government is no different than any other business in this respect, or a household, in that it needs things so it can function. Okay? The government is going to need carpet, and it's going to need computers, it's going to need ink, right? And phones and weapons and ammunition, all that sort of stuff. All right? So when it taxes the market, when it levies a tax on the market, the first thing that happens is business is then willing to sell its production to the U.S. government, all right, so that it can get the dollars that it needs to pay the tax and then get on with life, all right? So in this manner, the government is able to provision itself with the goods and services that it needs to function as government. But the neat thing about this is the government will create a dollar to buy all this. That's the whole point. It puts a gun to your head and says you're going to pay a tax, and the only thing that will settle it is this thing that I issue called an IOU. It's a monetary instrument called the US dollar. The market needs to get a hold of that. It sells its stuff to the government. And in this manner, the government can provision itself in perpetuity without ever having to worry about how it's going to pay for it, how it's going to come up with the money to pay for it. It creates the money to pay for it. Then when it gets into private hands, that's when it starts to circulate in the economy. And that's how Steve Grumbine, and that's how Ken there, and that's how Beardsley Ruml got it in his back pocket, got $1 in his back pocket. That's where it all begins, okay? And the end road is the taxation after the fact. The government first spends, then after the spending is done, taxation occurs. And the government then destroys some of what it spent. So it's really that simple. It's so easy to understand.
Let's talk about old Beardsley for a minute, okay? So Beardsley Ruml wrote this wonderful piece going back to January of 1946.
It was January 3rd or January 6th of 1946.
Absolutely. And without going in, I'll let you do the deep dive here. but I've read this so many times because this is one of those ones that makes you have the aha moment. Mm-hmm. And I've posted it on our page tons of times. Yeah. And people that think somehow or another saying the truth equals something other than the truth probably have never bothered. Maybe they're lazy. Maybe they're incapable of reading. Maybe they're not very smart. Maybe they don't have lives worthy of reading such novel, interesting, valuable, life-saving things. But either way, this is from Beardsley Rummel, chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in 1946, who dropped the boom and said point blank, taxes for revenue are obsolete. Ellis, talk to us about that.
About the article that he wrote?
No, you just talk to us about the point of what was important in 1946 that made Beardsley Rummel talk about something like this, and why is it relevant today?
What Rummel wanted to get at, try to explain, was that the government no longer required revenue because there was no gold standard, and the Second World War just ended, and it's quite clear how we funded the war. All right. Rummel was trying to explain the purpose of federal taxation, the various purposes of federal taxation. You know, he talked about how it modifies behavior and how it allows you to control inflation and whatnot, and all these various aspects of taxation, but none of them have anything to do with revenue. That was the whole point of his article, was that none of these things, the U.S. government no longer requires a revenue. And the truth is that even during the gold standard, the government didn't require revenue. All right. The idea is that it had to defend a gold supply. And the reason why is because it decided to peg its dollar to gold. So it fixed the value of dollar to a certain amount of gold. Doing that requires that you keep the level of currency in circulation equal to the gold supply at that fixed exchange rate. All right. So it's going to necessitate taxation. Why? So that it can recycle what's already out there. The government first puts dollars into the economy. But when you have a gold standard, you're limited to how much gold you have. So if you don't want to run out of gold because people have to exchange that gold, exchange their dollars for gold. See, that's the whole purpose of the gold standard. That's the whole purpose. The U.S. Treasury would have to sit there and say, we're going to wait here till someone comes up. And lo and behold, here comes somebody with a dollar, and it wants to exchange it for gold. That's what that fixed exchange rate is. All right. This requires you maintain a gold supply, but you're also going to have to tax to make sure that the level of currency circulation, okay, doesn't go too high. Otherwise, if it did, the government could run out of gold because people are coming up exchanging the damn dollars. Exchanging the damn dollars for the gold. Government going to run out of gold. Okay. So what it would do is it would tax, and it would tax and collect dollars that the government already spent into existence. It would collect them and then re-spend them. And in doing so, this would not increase the number of dollars in circulation. And if it wanted to spend beyond what it could tax, it would then borrow. So it issued bonds. See, bonds back in the day, long time ago. It would issue bonds and then borrow more, okay? And then it would re-spend that. And this would not affect the level of currency in circulation, thereby protecting the goddamn gold supply. That's the whole point, all right? But the point that must be driven into people's heads is even during the gold standard, the government was the issuer. The dollar was a product of the U.S. government. It is today, it was then. The gold was not the money thingy. Gold was not money. Money was the dollar. Okay? People need to get this through their heads.
Why would they even say something otherwise? You notice how these gold bugs get it ramped up in their crotch that this is like some, I just don't get it.
Because they like the idea of speculative investments.
So they want to have a commodity that they can speculate on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what the gold standard is all about. Right? The richest people get a hold of the gold. I mean, you know, exchange your dollars for gold, whatever. You know, it just back then it just kept the capitalist in charge. And the reason why it kept the capitalist in charge was real fucking simple. The US government, the British government could not just create dollars at will like it did right now and just keep spending them, because that would be called printing money back then. And to do that, it would elevate the level of currency in circulation to such a point you'd run out of gold. Okay? So, you know, in light of this, since the government had to watch that gold supply, it could not act sometimes. Sometimes the government just could not act, all right, to address problems in its domestic economy appropriately, because it just can't create money. Okay, well, the Great Depression came along, and what do you think happened, Steve? They suspended gold convertibility. No shit. All right, and the reason why is because the government could not address a 15% unemployment rate on a gold standard. It's not possible. It needs to be able to spend. It just has to inject dollars and raise the level of currency in circulation to such a point that people can get moving, the economy can get moving again. Okay, that's the whole point. Gold is meaningless. It's not a monetary instrument. A gold coin can be a monetary instrument because it is issued by the government. Okay, it has an issuer, and the government promises to receive that coin back as payment for something, and it has a base value. But the gold in the coin itself is not the money. Get it? Okay, so gold bars, gold bullion, gold that you find in the rivers and streams of Alaska is not money. It's a commodity that people are willing to give you dollars for, just like a fucking car or an apple. Okay, I've got apples. I'm really hungry. I've got apples. I'll give you $2. I've got apples. Okay, thank you. It's the same thing with gold. It's just a speculative investment. That's what Bitcoin is. It's a speculative investment. Nothing more than that. It's commodity bullshit. It's not money.
Ellis, I want to talk to you about something else that's very, very important, because sadly, people don't realize that when you and I talk about economics, we are talking about a resource-based economy, period. We are talking about a RBE right now with the way that we're approaching this, because the real restraint, the real constraint on spending is real resources. It's not dollars.
It's not money that they filed bankruptcy. It's nonsense. I'm not paying attention to that. So you were saying resource-based economy.
Yes, resource-based economy is what we have right now. Even though we're not using it, we're acting as though the dollar is scarce, not the resources are scarce.
Right. What we have and what we've always had, even during the gold standard, was resources. That's the most important point. The real resources. Okay, the human labor and non-human materials. You know, like iron ore, steel, whatever you can imagine, land. Okay, doctors, lawyers, whatever. All right, and that's the whole point there. That's the main thing. All right, you can't issue, the government can't issue currency, all right, if it does not have the real resources available to affect production. All right, so a nation like the United States has vast resources. It can go on. I mean, it can do whatever it needs to do. So can the UK. But when you go and look at the Sudan, not so much. There's not much there. There's not much as far as real resource. You know what I'm saying? So you got, the government's kind of constrained there. Even if it could spend 1 quadrillion of its own currency, if it doesn't have the resources, you're just going nowhere. You got to have. Now, what's the best? I've explained this before. It was with cinema tickets, wasn't it? Yes. A theater has 500 seats in it, let's say. What would be the point of selling only 20 tickets and no more? And I don't mean that only 20 people want to buy tickets. I mean, you've got 500 people that want to watch this movie, and there are 500 seats available, but the theater says, no, we'll only sell 20 tickets. What would be the point of that? Yet that's what the US government does. That's what the British government does. That's what the Australian government does. It has this vast capability, these vast resources, but it refuses to spend to access those resources. That's what's going on. That's why poverty exists. That's why.
You brought up another phenomenal one that I want to hit in this whole semantic game, so people understand the difference about debt and national assets versus national debt. And you posted this some time ago in a different format. We have a nice meme that describes it. This is all the different times that the U.S. has tried to pay off the national debt. And the idea that fuels all that is the very stuff you were just talking about, I mean, we've got a fear-based, they tantalize us with the idea that if we don't tax, then we're going to incur debt. And then all of a sudden we're going to go to hell and we're all going to die. And this right here, this list shows empirically every single time we have tried to quote unquote pay down our national assets, I mean debt, we have hit a depression, a freaking depression. We're not talking about like the minor league walk in the park. We are talking about tanking the economy.
Yeah, and that's because you're destroying the dollars in existence. That's what you're doing. The national debt is every dollar that the government has ever spent into existence minus everything that is destroyed through taxation since the beginning of its history. All right? So if you've got, like right now, $21 trillion sitting out there, national debt, oh God, let's pay it down. To pay it down or pay it off basically means that you're going to destroy every last dollar in existence and basically think that you can operate an economy with no money in it. That makes lots of sense. All right? Well, this is what happened. Every single... It's clear here from this chart. The U.S. government has run deficits, all right, the majority of its existence. Deal with it, all right? Every year it's running deficits, except for these 7 times. See these 7 periods right here? There were 7 surpluses in our history. Each one of them were followed with a downturn. 7 surpluses, 7 downturns immediately after. And the reason why is because they tried to eliminate the debt entirely like Jackson did, or they tried to eliminate a great chunk of it. And the end result is doing is destroying dollars. It's reducing the number of dollars available to the domestic economy. And the economy is going to wipe out. It's going to crash. All right? That's why. That's what a surplus is. Surplus is the destruction of dollars, right? The government can't save in its own currency. It makes no sense. It's the issuer. Why does it need to save? It's okay. We are savers. We are net savers. The government is a net spender. We're a net saver. Okay, see how that works? And if you don't let it spend, you don't have nothing to save. It's as simple as saying if you don't let your employer spend to pay, you're not going to have an income. In the same damn way. If the U.S. government does not spend, the private sector will not have an income. That's simple.
So let's talk about...
Hey, Aaron!
Let's talk about our
best student ever.
Aaron Taylor, who is a friend of the program, friend of Real Progressives, all-around good lady, and quite frankly, your student, Ellis. Talk to us.
She's my most successful student ever. She came to me and didn't know and just wanted to know. And from there, she took off. She's read the MMT textbook. She owns it cover to cover. You know, she's fantastic. And she doesn't let on how much she knows sometimes. So, you know, she could be dangerous in a debate. You just never know. But I'm telling you, she's a great person, she's just absolutely fantastic. I'm so proud of her. I tell her every month, I'm just reminding you that I'm proud of you.
I want to say this also. Erin comes in my inbox every so often because she sees the brutal character assassinations, trash talk, and trolling that I get. And she just reminds me how important what you and I do is, Ellis, and to not give up and to not lose hope, and that we provide her hope. And to me, that in and of itself makes everything that we do worthwhile. Aaron, I want you to know that. But let's address her tweet here, because this is a really important tweet, because we get a lot of nonsense. I mean, guys, when I'm talking about worthlessness, I'm talking about the epitome of neoclassical drivel. We're talking about Milton Friedman garbage. And, you know, we're always hit with this nonsense about, haven't you ever heard of inflation? What about the hyperinflation?
Yeah, it reminds me of Thomas Pally.
Yeah, well, I got a thing from him too. I want to get to that in a second. We can have a little bit of fun with it, but let's talk. You're on show, brother. Don't pick your nose.
I'm picking my nose. I'm telling. I went like this.
I'm just joking.
Not Thomas Pally again. That man's been debunked. I mean, it's carcass now.
Well,
There's nothing left in the budget to pick
let's hit
on.
the inflation angle first, and then I'll bring up old T. Paley in a second.
Yeah, supposedly MMT never addresses inflation. It's total nonsense. We've always addressed inflation. We always have addressed inflation. All right. To claim that, basically, part of this comes from these people who claim that MMTists go about saying the government should just spend and spend and spend and spend and spend and spend and spend, because it's all going to be okay. And that's BS. No one says that. Randall Wray made it a point many years ago to state that deficits that are too large can be inflationary, and deficits that are too small result in unemployment. Okay, and MMT has the job guarantee proposal. All right, this thing literally attenuates inflation. It gets rid of any concerns about the Phillips curve trade-off. We can't have full employment cause inflation. Okay, it gets rid of all that. You can have full employment with price stability. We demonstrated how that's possible with a job guarantee. It's been demonstrated now. Years and years now. Okay, we handle inflation. They just don't like the way we handle it. They want to believe that they need something to be afraid of. They need something to scare people with. And then, the mainstream's got their inflation expectations. I don't want to talk about that because I'll get really angry and throw up all over the place. But the point being is that MMT does deal with inflation. It always has. And Paley argued in 2013 that we use boilerplate language. We use boilerplate language about inflation. In other words, we're just paying lip service to it, but we're not dealing with it. The truth of the matter is, to answer this Paley thing, I've had 3 or 4 people send me links to his paper, unaware that it had been debunked since the moment it was published. The thing about him was that back in the late 90s, the MMT community had already dealt with things called sector bottlenecks. This was one of Paley's major arguments in his debunking MMT paper. He wanted to argue about sector bottlenecks. As you approach full employment, various sectors will begin to be unable to increase their output. They get stuck. And so you get these bottlenecks. Output begins to bottleneck, gets really narrow. And it happens in various sectors. So inflationary pressures begin to rise before you can even get to unemployment, full employment. This is the Phillips curve trade-off thingy. But what Paley had to have known is that even as the late 1990s, this had already been addressed. And there is so much literature on the job guarantee out there, all right, and had been out there long before 2013 and 2012, all right? Yet here he is writing this stupid paper, completely ignoring the fact that these things were dealt with in the late 90s and all the job guarantee literature, and just proceeded as though MMT had said nothing about it. Okay, that paper was debunked from the moment of its publication. All right, it's fraudulent. Right, end of story. All right, and so that deals with the inflation thing and Paley. All right, so he's not debunking anything. He's not debunking MMT. MMT actually debunked him the moment the paper was published. So.
Okay. Now, I am very sorry. I lied. I don't have a Thomas Paley. I had a different one. I'm not going to say it. What's that?
I don't want to see it.
No, I'm saying I didn't want to see it either. But I'm going to show you all something else, too, that I think for those people who don't think that we're making a difference.
Way to go, Tim.
I want you guys to see this. I think that, I'm almost embarrassed at times because of the way that we have been able on Facebook largely to get so many people that had never, ever heard of MMT, etc., to pay attention. But let me tell you something. Tim Canova is in one of the videos where Stephanie and Warren and the gang are talking about how the budget should not be run like a household. And it's a rather long thing, but Tim is long since, I would say he has been what we would call MMT adjacent. But I think Tim is largely just trying to play within the rules of the political sphere that he lives in. But Tim has quite frankly come out boldly here. And I mean, I want to make sure you guys see this. I want you all to know what a good man Tim is. Tim and I talked on the phone at length the other day. I was going to try and do a panel discussion with him at the Convergence conference here coming up this coming weekend. I think I'll be speaking. Joe Firestone will be speaking. Friend of Real Progressives. He's still with us, but he's acting on his solo as John Lancelot. He'll be there as well. There'll be other individuals that you know and love there, but I just want you to see this. I want you to see this loud and clear. He's not sitting there saying, well, we got to raise taxes, or we got to do this, or we got to do that. He's quite frankly telling Mike Pence, hey, if you want to save the people and you want to take care of the disaster, and you want to do this, that, and the other, how about MMT? Hey, yo, how about MMT? How about understanding that the U.S. study of U.S. economic history, no real fiscal constraints to fulfill government functions? Folks, anybody who says that this is a cult or that this is somehow or another a misrepresentation is a liar, is a liar. Did I say it loud enough? Is a liar. Fucking liar. A liar, a liar, a liar. Tim Canova rocks the house party at the drop of a bat, and we beat a biter down with aluminum bat. I'm telling you right now, this right here is exactly why we do what we do. We are trying desperately to make this happen. Ellis. What are the political constraints that are out there outside of the normal operational constraints that someone like a Tim Canova might be facing?
There are no operational constraints.
Well, there is a political constraint. And let me tell you what that political constraint is that you and I experience every day. Incredulity. An inability to accept the fact that the government is the creator of the dollar. That means that we don't have to run to banks and get dollars. That means we don't have to go out there to big businesses and get dollars. That means we don't have to beg Bill Gates for dollars. That means that we don't have to go to some Rothschild for dollars. That means that we don't have to do anything, that the U.S. government speaks them into existence. And because of that incredulity, that right there is a political constraint, the people's willingness to accept crumbs rather than accept the fact that the government doesn't have any operational constraints whatsoever to take care of the people.
Yeah. What people need to understand about that, or start understanding, is that the U.S. government, this isn't just about spending. The U.S. government actually controls the economy, 100%. The U.S. government alone controls the economy, it controls the market, it controls you, okay? 100% at all times. If you happen to see, I don't know, a disaster before, I'm not talking about a natural one, I'm saying something goes on, you see a mass shooting, or you see some arsonist set fire to half of Los Angeles, okay, and the government doesn't respond. That's because it's choosing not to, okay. Things that go bad in the economy, things that go bad in the market, things that go bad in your daily lives, can all be, you can all trace it right back to federal policy, government policy, because the government is us, okay? And it's instituted to sit in authority over everything that goes on in this country, even if it doesn't regulate your speech, even if it doesn't tell you what you can and can't do as far as in the bedroom or whatnot, right? What we're talking about is when it comes to the economy and society, whatever decisions it makes for the economy affects society, all right? So if the government is not going to spend for full employment and public purpose, you're going to end up getting social collapse. You're going to get poverty everywhere, high unemployment. This goes on and on and on. Okay, and so people need to grasp that it's not just so much focusing on the spending, but there are political ramifications. Okay, MMT has a political economy. And not next Sunday, but the Sunday after that, I'm going to start talking about it on the show, this political economy, because people need to understand how MMT actually applies to a progressive agenda for change. Okay, how does MMT address militarized police? Okay, I was asked that one time. How does it address military police? I mean, a militarized police force. Come on, what's it got to do with economics? Everything. How it addresses it is how it gets rid of it. Okay, you can have progressives sitting there banging their fists and protesting and hoping that they'll make change, or you could have progressives that have a loaded gun and they can force that change without firing a shot. Okay, it's called a job guarantee, and in 2 weeks I'll explain that. But yeah, Tim Canova's done a very noble thing here to step up and speak out and swing the bat. You know, we have to realize that in the world of politics, there's things that are politically unacceptable. You understand? You know, because that's just the way it is. But it's nice to see that in the U.S., finally people are stepping up. You know, and they're starting to speak. All right. We've seen this in the UK. I've been doing a lot of work with the UK, especially since the election. I increased it a bit, and I'm going to increase it some more. MMT is making brilliant headway in the UK. Okay? Those people are desperate for change. And, you know, I'm glad to see in the US certain things are starting to change too. So I applaud Tim Canova for that. That's a great, great tweet.
So let's take on this Kelton tweet here real quickly. This right here for me is
I'm not opposed to Kelton. Oh, you want me to analyze it? Oh, okay.
I want people to read this because I find this one to be really, really funny. You don't realize how tongue-in-cheek this is. I mean, she's like stroking you on the forehead and patting you and saying, you know, this whole cost to taxpayers meme, while rhetorically enticing, has no economic meaning when applied to the spending of the U.S. government. And this is like so important because this goes to you, Bobby Reich, and this goes to all the other neo-libs like Paul Krugman and all the other fools like Simon Wren Lewis. Just threw that in there for you, Ellis, to get you smiling. Ultimately,
that was over the top and, you know, unfair and wide of the mark.
I just want everybody to see this, right? I mean, is this okay? Let's do three questions. Number one, did Steve Grumbine make up this tweet? Do you think that I fabricated this tweet to create a cult? Yes or no? I'm pretty sure that I did not.
That's a strange question, there, Steve.
I know, but I just want to know if anybody,
Are you all right?
Made this up.
Are you sure you're all right? That's a strange question.
The next
sounds
question,
a lot like Stephanie Kelton talking. Or are you saying that you're going around, you're a sock puppet, and you call yourself Stephanie Kelton? You have another account, and you pretend to be this woman called Stephanie Kelton, who's a professional economist. Is that what you're saying?
It must be, because I've been told that Steve
trolling on
makes this shit up. This shit up, and that no economist says this stuff. Okay, so I really want to.
This goes back to what we talked about last week about these people who assume that Steve Grumbine made up MMT. MMT has been around far longer than Steve Grumbine's been talking on Facebook. Come on, that's just nonsense. It's nonsense. I heard Steve Grumbine speak and I suddenly changed. I went from orthodox to heterodox straight into MMT. I gave up everything there is and I said, I'm retiring and I'm going to follow Grumbine. Give me a break. He called me. He called me and asked if I'd be on the program. What the hell's wrong with you people? Now we're gonna tear down. We're gonna talk about this Kelton tweet, or what are we doing here?
Well, I want to talk about it, but I'm going to use this next one to bludgeon it up a little bit because I think that it's great. I want to add this too here, right? So this right here, she's saying repeal and replace establishment economics that caters to balanced budget, zero-sum austerity mindset.
Right.
Okay? So let's put those two together, Ellis, if you think about it, and start beginning to peel the layers of the onion back and see for just a moment if people begin to understand why it is that this whole idea of taxpayers paying for things, taxpayers funding spending, taxpayers, tax dollars, hard-earned tax dollars, paying for all these bombs and paying for stuff to Israel, paying for stuff for them damn people over there do bad things, make bad choices, sitting on the bench, not doing nothing, sitting on the porch. Let's talk about that. I mean, seriously, talk about the whole idea of taxpayer-funded anything.
How it's rhetorically pleasing to hear. What she's saying is, in the first tweet, she's saying is that the idea resonates with people, okay? Because they can understand it from their own household budget perspective. You know, you got to have an income to spend and that. So the effect on taxpayers, while it's rhetorically pleasing, meaning while it resonates with people, there's no validity to the statement whatsoever. It's a total fiction. All right. And then where she's talking about repeal and replace establishment economics, I have my own way of saying that, but I agree with this 100%, but I have my own way. It's a little bit longer. And it basically tells you, I basically try and tell you in no uncertain terms, orthodox economics is not actually economics whatsoever. All right. All it is dogma. All right. Justification to move more wealth and more control over real resources to very rich people. Okay. So it's a manual on how to move the national income to the rich. All right. That's it. And let them control the economy. It's a manual. And then it is written and typed up and it looks very professional. And it's sold to people with the title economics. It's masquerading as economics. That's all it is. It's propaganda. It's capitalist propaganda masquerading as economics. And so here, Stephanie says we need to repeal and replace the orthodoxy. Damn right. It all has to go. This balanced budget, zero-sum austerity mindset must be wiped from the face of the earth, because it has no application to reality whatsoever. So to the Tories, while it might be rhetorically pleasing to hear the word austerity, it's meaningless. It's meaningless as far as policy is concerned because it's useless. It only kills people. It only destroys. It does nothing whatsoever. It does not help. There's no such thing as the government tightening its belt because you have to. The reason why you are tightening your belt in a recession is because the government already tightened it. Got that? It's the government that tightened its belt first. That's why you're having to tighten your belt. And then you look at the government and say, oh, you got to tighten your belt. And it's, yeah, I do. And it keeps on tightening it. It's already tightened it. There wouldn't be a recession if the fucking government hadn't tightened its belt before you. Okay? So the government first pulls up its trousers, pulls that belt really tight, tighten the belt. And then you end up having to tighten your belt because of what the government did. All right? Austerity basically says the government tightens its, and it doesn't say this, I'm telling you what it basically says. The government first tightens its belt, causes a recession. Okay? Then you have to tighten your belt because you're running out of money. Great. And so the solution is the government has to tighten its belt further and further and further. And the reason why is because we all know what the orthodoxy wants us to believe. That the currency comes from anywhere but the US government or anywhere but the UK government. It comes from the market. The market, dollars just magically appear when GDP goes up. No, there's a dollar fairy. And it visits every corporation and just goes, dollar, 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 fairy to fairy to fairy. And dollars just appear magically in the vaults of corporations, and then they begin spending them on payroll. Or the new one, banks. Dollars come from banks because banks have money in them. Banks have dollars in them. People put their paychecks in there. So since banks deal with dollars, that's where dollars come from. I found a rock on a railroad track. So all rocks come from railroad tracks. I mean, Jesus Christ. So, at any rate, this is the whole point. The orthodoxy wants us to believe that it's teaching economics and that it is valid economics, when in reality it's just a bunch of mysticism. It is nothing more than propaganda that is masquerading as economics. Okay? It's just got a title that says economics. It doesn't mean anything. You know, what did Chris Farley say? I could shit in a box. I could take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed if you like. Yeah, I could write a bunch of useless fucking shit that's 700 pages long and on the cover call it economics. Okay? That doesn't make it economics. I'm sorry. Krugman's not an economist. Well, I don't care. He's not a credentialed economist.
This is a Grumbinism because I got to the point where I was snapping, okay? So I'm putting this thing up here, and I think that I want folks, I'll make sure I take the blame for this, but this right here, to me, is quite frankly the real deal, okay? There are a great many bad people, horrible people, who operate from semantic arguments. So bad are they would rather let people die than actually not play semantic games. I think this is very, very important, Ellis, and I'll tell you why I think so. People find themselves to be bright, intelligent. They think they're so smart. They can trace a frigging, balance sheet back and forth for hours. And they can sit there and say, well, look, when it jumps here, there's a pointer to this balance sheet. You watch it go down here. So really, in actuality, it does this. And they sit there kind of cockeyed, arm leaning on the thing with that sideways smile like they got something that nobody else knows. And the reality is that all they've done is the thousands of people that have been learning enough to say to the government, we won't take it anymore, damn it, you're going to serve our needs. All of a sudden, the bozos that live in the semantic world have taken away a chunk of the power of the people who only knew enough to say to their Congress critters, do for us or we will take you out. These people have gone ahead and said, well, let me tell you something. That's that's a little bit of an oversimplification there. Let me tell you this 4-hour version of this really, really easy concept, but I'm going to overcomplicate it just to stroke my own personal worthless ego. And that right there to me is greater evil than Trump. It is a greater evil than the KKK. It's a greater evil than Nazism. That ego is that pride, that self-centered narcissism is what sidetracks very good efforts. It's what sidetracks people who just have enough bandwidth to learn the basics, just to act accordingly in their own best interests. And some selfish son of a bitch, egotistical narcissist decides they're going to sideline them with semantics. I find them to be the scourge of the earth. That's straight from Grumbine's mouth. Quote me. I promise you, I will stand by it. I mean, Ellis, how many people have you experienced in your teaching time that you've had to debunk nonsense, silly, silly lies, or silly, silly, overly complex rabbit holes that have taken them out of the game, as you like to say, sideline them from actually being effective in any kind of people's revolution?
How many times? Does this happen to me?
I know it's not a number, obviously. It's like, how often has that occurred to you?
It's happened. It's happened all the time. It never stops. It's from the beginning till even right now. You have to. You deal with that. A lot of the people that I talk to are genuinely just misinformed, or thankfully they realize that something doesn't smell right with the mainstream narrative, and they're asking, tell me about it. And other people are just jackwagons. I mean, they're just asshats, and they want to make a name for themselves. And it more or less has everything to do with politics and, the easy stuff. All you have to do is watch TV and, you're intelligent. And then you can get out there on a live stream and talk about it. And, mainstream economics is pretty much easy to, not the whole of macroeconomics or economics, but, the narrative is easy to remember. U.S. government's broke. It needs tax dollars to fund spending. It's going to have to borrow from China, and we're all going to die. You know, that's easy to remember. So they go out and deal with the easy stuff, the politics. And if someone comes along and says something that, I don't know, it's possible that the government could end poverty, they not willing to tax the rich because we're going to die, China. You know, and that's all they want to do, is just want to make a name for themselves saying the same shit that people have been saying for 30 years. I mean, how hard is that? And so I deal with people like that very, very rarely. And the reason why is because I don't address them. I don't talk to them. You know, they might try to challenge me and I'll ignore them because I've got better things to do.
Right.
You know, I don't lower myself to that level. I will lower myself all the way down to the level of a 5-year-old if a 5-year-old is wanting to learn. Yeah, I will. I'll play games with the 5-year-old and try and find a way. But what I won't do is entertain ridiculous games of a 30, 40-year-old person who wants to behave like a 5-year-old. I'm not doing that.
Well, I want to show you some success here. She's putting it to me, but this is to we. This is to real progressives. Get my name out of there and just put real progressives. And that would be you, myself, Joe, and all the other tons and tons of people on the team that help make these things happen, share our posts, our viewers out there who are loyal, who stand in solidarity with us when we're attacked. This right here told me all I needed to see. Debbie Tucker. She goes, Steve Grumbine, you have brought thousands of people to understand our monetary truths. You have brought thousands to hear professors who have been trying to get more exposure. You have been amazing. Put the haters and the drama addicts in a little box and send them away mentally. They are not worth your time, effort, or emotion. You have more important things still to do. And Ellis, this right here is speaking directly to what you and I just said. I mean, you can't get a more ringing endorsement, in my opinion, of what we've been working on. To me, that right there just told me that we're doing it, that we're making things happen, that eventually, as we get our activism pillar together, Regina, you guys, all of you, Catherine, Joy, Matt, Mark, you name it, Diane, Jason, all of you that are working in the policy pillar and the activism pillar, media pillar, and education pillar. You guys, we've got work to do. Our team has work to do. And folks, there's plenty of people out there begging for us to get busy with it and get out in the streets and make things happen. So, Ellis, with that, I want to go ahead and give you a chance to close it out because you are just the master of disaster here. I really appreciate everything you bring to this.
What is the master of disaster? What does that mean? What does that mean exactly?
That means you are the Mac Daddy. You lay the smack down, it's over. That's the final word. I love it.
Oh, I don't know about that. I just happen to have this unique ability to relate to the average person. And I know there are people out there saying, oh, God, I hate the word average. I hate the term average person. But I'm trying to facilitate understanding. I'm not trying to speak to economists. I gave that up a long time ago. I don't speak to these people. Well, that's not true. I will argue. But I don't speak to them. I certainly don't try and reach them. Okay, I took to social media as a way to give me something to do in my retirement. And I thought, well, I'll teach it. This is a good idea. Maybe I'll try and reach people this way. And I've been going ever since. I just have a knack for being able to explain this ridiculous stuff in a way people can understand. So as long as people can understand the fundamentals, then they're a well-informed citizen already, so they can make change. Turn attention to the UK. For example, people there are very desperate, and it's spreading like wildfire in the UK. MMT is just, you've even got Marxists going, tell me more. That's unusual. Okay, when, you'd have better look with a conservative than you would a Marxist. But you've got Marxists over there going, hey, tell me more about this. People are genuinely tired and they want to know more. And there's no duopoly there. There's many different parties, and the British people, more or less, all open to different ideas, right? So it's a little bit easier there, but still making headway. And the thing would be possible in the US if it weren't for this narrow-mindedness. That I think this weirdness about it, and this, I don't know, you know what I'm talking about, Stephen, this crap, this particular to the US. You should have put up that post. I posted something about US, some members of the US left. They're petulant children that scream and whine and harangue the nation to death with useless drivel. You know, I can't remember
somewhere, but I didn't find it. I should.
That's the whole reason I said, look, I'm done. I'm reducing my work with the US and I'm increasing it to the UK because, you know, the UK, they want to hear this. You know, if US progressives don't want to hear it, then fine, hell with it. You can, you know, I'm out. You know, try and find someone that can do what I do. They'll be, oh, that's easy. Nobody can be me. Okay, I do something unique. All right, and that's not arrogant. It's just simply saying, okay, well, I'm off out of it. I'll go to places where people appreciate understanding this stuff, not me understanding MMT, who appreciate progress, who want to bring it about, and are desperate for it. I'll just go there. And then when you guys are ready, you give me a call. All right. And you know, sometimes US progressives, not all, I'm trying to be clear, it's not all, it's just some, are just very pompous, snobby, stuck-up, self-centered individuals who talk down to people, and they hide all of this whiny complaint. It's all it basically is, just whiny complaints, hidden behind a carefully crafted veil of large vocabulary words. You know, to make them seem intelligent. You know, people, oh, he said a very large string of words. He must be very educated. All he's doing is complaining. I understand his vocabulary. I'm telling you, he's just crying. He's whining. Yeah, and that's it. They're very pompous son of a bitches too. I don't get this in the UK. I've yet to experience that. I experienced pompous elitist behavior from the Tories, but nothing like this from progressives, you know? So it's a very, very different experience. And I thought maybe it'd lower my blood pressure if I try that for a while, you know, and make some progress. But, yeah, you just took a couple of, you just had to deal with a whole week of this nonsense there, didn't you, Stephen? What I'm talking about right now, that pompous, snobby.
It was unbearable. Let me tell you something without going into it again, because I've already put the, you know, the Band-Aid on it, and I don't want to pick the scab. But I want to tell you something. We come here for a couple reasons. Number one, to provide solutions, to provide hope, and to provide you with a taste of something you never had before, which is an understanding of economics the right way, and not just the way they taught you in school. You know, I have an MBA. You know, we all have shit in our own backyard here. And I was taught everything incorrectly. I mean, I probably learned a few things right by accident, but they were never the right things. They were always founded in the wrong things. And people attack me like I'm a cult leader. They attack me like I am somehow or another like eating their babies. I'm not joking. I had one person sit there and say that I sexualize everything. Look at his eyes. They're so demonic. And I'm sitting there like I'm like looking at myself holding Mr. Butters, and I'm thinking to myself, you're loving me. Why in the world would they say something about me being evil like that? Why would they say something like that? And it hurts.
It kind of makes you wonder, Stephen, why people just, why are we even talking to progressives? You have better luck with the friggin' conservatives for some strange reason, but in the UK, you have great luck with the progressives and horrible luck with conservatives. It's just a total upside down.
Ellis, I literally went to the police the other night for threats, death threats, and threats of violence and other innuendos.
That's unacceptable.
Police about this, not because of myself. I will beat a biter down. I'll do it. But I tell you what, when you've got a family and they're innocent and they're sitting there hoping that you're doing the right thing by taking time away from them to teach people in our audience about economics. You're hoping that you're helping people. And they turn around and turn it into something disgusting. I look at my family and I say, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't mean to put you in harm's way. I want to name names. My God, do I want to name names. But trust me, the police know their names. Yes, the police do know their names. So does the FBI. And they will know their names again. Anytime someone says, and there's people telling me that I was like a pedophile, that I was in the Podesta Pizzagate stuff. There were people out there saying all kinds of horrible, horrible things because we're teaching economics that doesn't jive with their old school logic that they've been fighting forever. They're, you know, Plato's allegory of the cave. This is where they live. And my family shouldn't suffer because they're too dumb to get this, because they refuse to get it. They would rather demean me, destroy my character, run around, make threats. I'm not joking. People that tell me to get along, I swear to God, if I showed you everything, I haven't shown you anything, but if I showed you everything, you would never ask me to try to be the one that gets along again. You would never, ever, ever tell me that. You would be ashamed of yourself for trying to lecture me. You should be ashamed of yourself for trying to lecture me. You should trust that what I'm telling you is I have been receiving death threats. I have been receiving threats to my employer. I have been receiving threats of all manner. And these people are known to the FBI now. They will be on a terrorist watch list if I have my way about it. The next person that does it, I promise you, I will go full bore to the FBI. And that's silly because we're just trying to teach economics so that you guys can have a New Deal 2.0, so that you guys can have a life more abundant and not be led by the nose by lies. But that's the reward. That's the reward. And then I get scolded by people telling me to just get along and to stop fighting. I'm sorry, but if you aren't walking in my shoes, you don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I appreciate your time, Ellis. I really do. Thank you for making sacrifices.
Two Sundays. I won't be here next Sunday, but 2 Sundays from now. I want to do a show. I want to talk about how MMT addresses things like militarized police, you know, the political aspects of it. See if maybe we can get through to some of these people who can't understand why MMT applies and why it's so important. Yeah, so if you want to find out, tune into that particular show because I'm going to be discussing it.
All right. All right, Ellis. Well, with that, let's just go ahead. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time with us tonight. I am going to go ahead and let us all say one happy good night.